Are you ready? Because we ready. You ready? Because we ready. Welcome to my YouTube channel where we're going to be breaking down today, this week, who shot Meg. We are finally at the stage of where we're going to get to hear the facts and evidence in the case of Tory Lanez against Meg Thee Stallion, who's the victim. Now, we've all been waiting to find out who shot Meg. Who did it? How did those alleged fragments enter into her foot? Who did it? Did Tory Lanez do it? Did her former best friend do it? Did the bodyguard do it? Who did it? Because right now, we don't know. So we are all assuming. But don't worry, I'm going to break down how you are to prepare for the evidence and testimony that you're going to hear throughout the week during this trial that we've all been waiting over 2 years to figure out what happened on that night. So let me break it down to you. Tory Lanez is charged for shooting Meg Thee Stallion. Now, I'm an attorney within the state of Texas, so I'm going to break it down for you how it would play out in the state of Texas. In the state of Texas, he will be charged with a second-degree felony, which is ag assault deadly weapon. There are 2 ways that in the state of Texas you are charged with ag assault deadly weapon. 1, if you use a deadly weapon against another human being, or 2, if you threaten to use a gun against another human being. Not a gun, but just a deadly weapon, what is considered a deadly weapon within the code. Now, when you take that into account, the punishment range for a second-degree felony that he will be looking at, Tory Lanez will be looking at, is 2 to 20 years, a minimum of 2 to 20 years. Now, it can be enhanced if he had priors, but we know he don't have priors, so we're not even going to entertain that. However, because Tory Lanez does not have a criminal record, he is going to automatically qualify for probation, which he will be looking at a minimum of 2 years deferred, up to 10 years. Now, what that means is an individual within the state of Texas that is charged with what Tory Lanez is charged with and is standing trial for can be eligible for probation because he's never, ever been charged with a crime. Now, I can just tell you within the state of Texas, he would automatically be offered a 2-year or 2 to 10-year deferred option. Automatically. He is not an individual who is on the first offense going to automatically go to jail. That's just the reality of it. And we have to lower expectations for victims to let them understand, yes, unfortunately, this person did the ultimate violation, which is causing you harm. However, based off of their criminal record, this individual like Tory Lanez is not automatically going to go to jail. The reason why a prosecutor or anyone would move for an offer of a prison time is because he's a celebrity. Not because he's an average person, because he's a celebrity. But that's what in the state of Texas he will be looking at. Not prison, y'all. No, that would not be the first option. It would be probation. And then you got to look at the facts and the evidence of the case to determine if you're going to proceed to trial. If a defendant like Tory Lanez automatically says, I'm not taking anything, then the state has no choice but to prepare for trial. And in this particular case, because it's so much that has been going on outside of the court, so much conversation, so many people talking, so many people have opinions, it is going to be very difficult for a juror to not know what is going on in the real world with this case. So how they're going to get through this case. Now, we know that there's some medical records. We know that there's GSR that was tested allegedly on his hands that has come back allegedly to not show GSR. And let me just break down GSR's gunshot residue. Gunshot residue is and can be found on an individual that has fired a gun or that is in close proximity of a gun that has been fired. It can, and how they test it, from the experts that I have used within trials, they say that they have a time frame, a time limit in order to actually properly retain GSR evidence off of the individual, whether it's clothes or their body parts. In this case, they tested Tory Lanez's hands. They take it out, swab your hands, and they go back and test it. From allegedly, they didn't find anything, so that's going to be highly contested in this trial. The GSR, the medical records, Meg's inconsistent statements, and that's why it's important. I don't care if you are trying to protect anyone. You got to make sure that you are telling the truth at all times, especially your side, because Credibility is going to be very important throughout this trial. A juror, you can lose a juror based off of the lack of credibility they feel from you. So the issues with Megan, let's start with the issues with Megan. The inconsistent statement that she made saying that she was protecting everyone around because of Black Lives Matter. Absolutely, we know at that time that was the most exhausting time for African Americans because it felt like we were being lynched by police on a day-to-day basis, on a monthly, weekly. It felt that way. And you know, as Black women, we're automatically going to go into protection mode for Black men. So I do understand her position on that. But however, that is going to be used to attack her credibility, regardless of how much of a champion she was to African American men. That is actually going to be used to attack her credibility. That's why it doesn't matter. Always retain your honesty throughout the process, because you don't want, as a victim, you don't want to be re-victimized for you trying to save somebody else. And unfortunately, the defense is going to harp on that she did not tell the truth. And that should be looked at as a person that you cannot trust. I'm just going to tell you that's exactly what they're going to do. Now, also, she has been in the media talking about the friend, the homegirl that was super, super close to her. They are now enemies. So you automatically know that homegirl is going to show up and tell her truth. Not the truth from a standpoint of a friend, but the truth from a standpoint of a person who has been dragged through the media by her former friend who's a victim in the case. I'm going to tell you, it does not matter that they are under oath. They're going to do what's best for them. So at any moment where she would have protected Meg, now she's protecting herself. So don't be surprised if her story matches Tory Lanez, which is going to go to credibility. Who can they trust? Who can the jury trust when they're trying to determine who shot Meg? Who shot him? Outside of that, Meg went on and did a national interview. And let me tell you right now, prosecutors hate that. You are literally making a job for a prosecutor that much harder by you going out and talking to media outlets, posting on social media, doing songs. Like, all of that is making it hard for the prosecution to actually prove the case and show that you have been victimized. Now, some of those statements can and will be used against her throughout this trial to attack her credibility. You do not want to give a defense attorney any wiggle room to attack your credibility, to add doubt to anything that you want the jury to believe based off of what happened to you. And unfortunately, Meg has provided them with ingredients to raise doubt. I can see it from a mile a day. It irked my soul to see that she's giving them an option and a way to show the jurors that they cannot trust anything or question her credibility. Now, these are all allegations. This is not something that I know. This is something that I'm just getting your minds prepared to when it happens, you're not shocked. Outside of Megan, let's talk about the actual physical evidence, because physical science trumps opinions. Science trumps opinions. And I used to have to make jurors understand that when you are looking at science over an opinion, you need to make sure that that opinion matches that science. Because if it doesn't, you cannot trust it. And defense attorneys will harp on and try to make science not a legitimate fact throughout the case. And in this case, we only have medical records, we have GSR, and we have the actual gun, coupled with the eyewitnesses. This is the only evidence that they really have, outside of the additional statements. But I'm talking about from that night, because you can't bring in outside things to prove the elements of a crime that an individual was charged with within that particular case. You cannot. It's federal rules of evidence. You got to remain with the evidence that is actually establishing the elements of the crime. You can't bring in everything you think you can. It has to be relevant to the case. Now, they're going to depend on the nature of the relationship that comes in. The GSR results, once an actual forensic scientist comes and attests to the legitimacy of the tests that were conducted to show or not show if GSR was on Tory's hands. That is going to be one of the biggest pieces of evidence throughout this trial. The gun, that is going to be one of the biggest pieces of evidence. Meg's medical records, because we're trying to figure out if she was shot, if it was glass, if it was fragments. We don't know. We have no clue. The doctor knows. The individual that pulled those fragments or identified them as fragments knows. I can tell you after, they're going to bring in how she was acting physically. If you have fragments and you were on the stage within a week, they're going to harp on that. And this is not something that I want, I desire to see, but I'm just trying to prepare you for the actual testimony throughout this trial. There's going to be a play on words, but the jurors have the final say, and is the trier of fact. The lawyers, they fight on the facts. They fight and argue the facts. And they fight to get justice, whether it's the state trying to find him guilty or the defense trying to get them to find him not guilty. But understand, this is not going to be a long drawn out trial because there is not much evidence. You have the witnesses, the GSR, the gun, the medical records, and you have all these damn statements that they were making after the fact. You may have some people that they called to attack experts and all of that, but understand, that's it. He's not going to go to prison. In my opinion, based off the facts, he's not going to go to prison. Can he be found guilty and given probation? Absolutely. But if the defense does a good job at attacking the credibility, especially the credibility not only of Meg's statements, but the credibility of the evidence, I do not see a juror finding him guilty. And it only takes one. It only takes one to cause a mistrial. It only takes one to cause a disruption throughout the proceeding. When they're back there and they're deliberating, it only costs one. It only takes one. I'm telling you, I've seen it. You think that you have a slam dunk case and it takes one person. It only takes one. So be clear and don't be upset and disappointed as the facts come out, because you heard it here first. It's not as slam dunk as people think. It is actually harder than you think. This case, even though it's so simple on its face, it's the noise. It's the noise that comes in and is trying to creep in to make it seem like it's bigger than what it is. Yes, someone allegedly got shot, and if the evidence shows that Tory Lanez is the culprit, he needs to be held accountable. If the evidence shows otherwise, then justice demands that he be found not guilty. But it's not from the court of public opinion. It's from their peers, jurors that were selected throughout selection process. So it ain't y'all. Y'all don't get to make the decision. But trust and believe that the facts and evidence are going to come out this week. We're finally going to find out who shot Meg. And I just wanted to give y'all just a brief overview of the expectations. It's not high. It's not that deep. We're going to find out finally, and justice will finally happen whether he be found guilty or not guilty. So lower them standards, pay attention to the evidence, and understand the jury is in control. And what they determine is set. The end, nothing more, nothing less. Now I'm going to be doing some more follow-ups throughout the trial just to, debrief for you all. So tune into my channel throughout this week as we are going to figure out who shot Megan. Finally, did Tory shoot her or not? We're finally going to figure out who shot Megan.